Jesus said, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you abide in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit." As we run the race of life, let's not forget that the world sees the fruit, not the branches. In order to win people to Jesus, we must be fruit-bearing Christians, or else the cross will be of no effect. It's not what we say or who we vote for, it's what we do. Stay with us. From Chicago's Moody Church, this is Running to Win with Dr. Erwin Lutzer, whose clear teaching helps us make it across the finish line. Today, Erwin Lutzer tells of struggling to be among the first to get into a crowded van after a Promise Keepers rally. Not much of a witness to the van driver.
And I thought to myself, you know, those guys who came by to pick up pastors on the vans, they didn't see anything much different than they'd have seen if they'd have been picking up people who just came from some kind of a marketing convention. Maybe a little different, because we laughed at our selfishness, but that was about all. How would you live if you esteemed others better than yourself? The van should have pulled up and nobody should have gotten on. We should have just stood there and say, we just can't go first. I can't go first. I can't go first. I can't go first. You know, come 11 o'clock, well, okay, since you're older, we'll put you on. That troubled me. Troubled me because, above all, we who preach on the cross and who believe in the deep work of the Spirit, we should have been the first to say, you go, and we'll wait. You know, Jesus said that except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But it is through the death of the cross that we bear fruit. It is coming to the end of our own rights. It is coming to the end of our own resources. Jesus says, whosoever shall lose his life shall find it. And whoever finds his life, he says, or lets go of his life, shall find it. Shall find it. Are you sometimes amazed that the cross which we love has done its work so superficially in our lives? And we still have so far to go. Let this mind be in you which was in Christ Jesus. He was in the glories of heaven and he came to this earth and he was born in a manger. Let's just think of this infinite descent from glory to grime and then live that way. Live that way. God values selflessness. Everything I see in the world fights against that kind of a spirit. His way up was down. God values humility. That's the first lesson that I see here in the text. And then there's a second lesson, and that is the value of suffering. The value of suffering. How did Jesus change the world? And he changed you and me, and he certainly changed the world, didn't he? But how did he do it? You say, oh, he did it through his miracles. No, his miracles did not change the world. His miracles benefited a few people, but only temporarily. Lazarus had to re-die again. Can you imagine when he gets sick and saying, oh, this again? Everybody that Jesus healed got sick and died of something. You know, Jesus did miracles and refused to advertise them. Today we have people who advertise them but don't do them. It wasn't through the miracles that Jesus changed the world. He changed the world through his suffering. And I don't know if there's a shortcut to that if we're going to be redeemed. There are different kinds of suffering. Taking the cross into the world. There is, of course, the suffering of circumstances. Sometimes that involves the physical sufferings, marital conflicts. There is a kind of suffering that undoubtedly attracts the attention of God because we suffer well. We should suffer well for his glory. There's another kind of suffering, though, and that is where we receive suffering because we belong to Christ. It's sometimes called persecution. All who live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But there's a third form of suffering that I think is even more precious to God, and that is voluntary suffering, such as what Christ did, where we choose to suffer though we would not have to. We could go back to our safe place, but we take the risk of sacrifice on behalf of somebody else. That is special to God. Bonhoeffer, of course, theologian who has attracted the attention really of the world, who was willing to stand up to Hitler, and who made the statement that when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die, and himself died in Flossburg at the age of 39. Bonhoeffer used to ask the people of his day and the church of his day, who is Jesus Christ for you? Christ said, if you go into the jails, inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. Let's not criticize the innkeeper. We do every day what he did, except we do it knowingly, and he does it ignorantly. He didn't know that Mary was bearing the Son of God, so let's let him off the hook. Fact is that you and I know that when we visit someone, Jesus expressly says, you have visited me, you have clothed me. Christ says that. And therefore we have the opportunity to ask the question today, who is Jesus Christ to us today? In Bonhoeffer's day it was the Jews, but who is it today in America? Certainly it is the unborn child. It is the single parent. It is the child reared in the ghetto. It is the poor. It can also be the cab driver. By the way, as a parenthesis, this week I caught a cab, talked to the man who listens to our radio ministry, and he was telling me that Dr. Stoll of Moody Bible Institute was in the cab with him. And this man is a believer, and Pastor Stoll, Dr. Stoll, took him by the hand and led him in prayer. And he must have told me that 3 or 4 times. He says, he actually held my hand. That's who Christ is to us, cab drivers. People at work who are very un-Christ-like, gives us a chance to treat them as Christ would treat them. And as a result of those opportunities, we extend beyond ourselves. There is a death that we need to die inside so that we can see that our circle of sacrifice must be in